Good morning, everybody. My name is Joyce Fitzpatrick, and I'm very happy to be with you this morning to talk about flourishing in older life, flourishing of people in particular who are living with a dementia. This is part of the Engaging Dementia series. In fact, it's number 6 of 9 different sessions which are available. I have been working and living with people with dementia for almost 20 years. My mother had dementia for 17 years, and I have been working in the area with older adults, setting up activities as an activity organizer for those years. I have very much enjoyed it, and I think I have learned some little tricks along the way, or I can see what works. So I'd like to share some of those with you today. Now, the title for today is a little bit unusual. It's Feed the Soul by Nourishing the Earth. And the reason I chose this, and indeed I chose this poster behind here, is that I often think an older person is very much like an old beech tree or an oak tree. You know, they look similar in many ways. They're there for a long time. They have a lot of experience behind them. And they're also fragile and prone to storms and upheavals of all sorts. So when I thought about it, I said, well, really what a person needs in older age is a lot of gentleness, in the same way as a tree does. A tree that's older needs care, needs attention to its needs. Recently here, we have had a very hot summer in Dublin, and I think all over Ireland, and a lot of our mature trees have suffered because nobody thought of actually going out with a few buckets of water and looking after them. It can be the same way with older people. Their needs can be overlooked. We can kind of assume that they are strong and they're resilient and oh, sure, they're fine. But in actual fact, that isn't the case, as we know, and as evidence shows, particularly over the last 2 years. I particularly like John O'Donoghue. He has a quote on the back of his book, Benedictus, and he says, there is a quiet light within every one of us, which burns quietly inside. It draws no attention to itself, and yet it's there, living and just being there. He says that this quiet light, or soul, as he refers to it, is what really makes us who we are and makes us live our life to the best, which is what flourishing is all about. This quiet light within is what brings us to love beauty and to love life. There's a lovely little quote, I have it here, that he has said. I think it's wonderful. He says, beauty, the human soul is hungry for beauty. And when we experience the beautiful, there's a sense of homecoming. Not lovely, a sense of homecoming. Some of our most wonderful memories are beautiful places and beautiful times where we felt immediately at home. We feel most alive in the presence of the beautiful, for it meets the needs of our soul. Now, we know that a woodland does very well if it's just left undisturbed, you know, the weather and people coming and going and all of that. But if we decide to build right beside a woodland and bring in chainsaws and diggers, we know that the trees suffer. And we now know that the trees communicate with one another. And so it is with people, and people living with the dementia in particular. They feel everything. They might not be able to express it, but they certainly feel overcrowding, they feel noise, and they certainly feel being ignored. Now, in all of my time working with older people, the thing I hear more than anything, and I heard it again yesterday from a lovely woman, she said, there's nobody to talk to around here. Isn't that sad? There's nobody to talk to. And you have a group of people in a room and they're all saying the same thing. There's nobody getting me what I need or what I want. So the experience of loneliness is one of the most awful experiences. And if you put that in with the experience of sitting all day, which we know is more dangerous than smoking, if you put the combination of loneliness and being stuck in a chair all day long without beauty, without care, without kindliness, it has a very detrimental effect on anybody, and certainly on older people. So today is about feeding the soul by nourishing the earth. And by the earth, I'm talking about the total environment that surrounds our older people. What if it was possible to alleviate all that suffering by better care models? There are many examples of better care out there in the world already. And I think it is our job and our responsibility to make ourselves familiar with what those are, whether they're in a different country or in a different part of our own country. I think it is our responsibility to find out what is best care practice and to really do it. I think it's far too late to be putting a sort of a band-aid of an activity program and a social network together. You know, throwing a few rummage boxes around and having bingo on a Thursday. I just don't think this is at all good enough. And I'm looking for a different kind of care, a different quality of care I'm wishing for our older people. We know really, really well what works. And Oliver Sacks, I keep coming back to, the neurophysician, he said that in my experience with people who are suffering a degradation of the brain and its activities, do very well with gardening, outdoor activities, and music. It's well known. But they're not the only two things, but those are the ones that have been researched in great detail. So have many other things. Engaging Dementia has released a list of references that we use on this course, this Flourishing course, and they are very extensive. And I would suggest that you get them and you read them. They cover the cognitive, the psychological, the physical, social, mental health, self-esteem, all the different parts of well-being. And they're there and they can be read, and some of them indeed are very short. The summaries are very short. I'm going to refer to some of the great advantages that people with dementia can benefit from if their environment is adjusted and catered to them. But we will get to the environment in a few minutes. I'm going to mention the references now and the benefits. So some of the psychological benefits are improving goal achievement, attention capacity, reducing stress and improving sense of well-being. Ulrich and Parsons, well known, Mooney and Wilson, Smith and Aldos, an increased sense of stability, Blair et al., an increased feeling of calm. What about this one? An increased sense of pride and accomplishment, Relf, R-E-L-F, well known in the area of older care. Improving social interaction, healthier patterns of social functioning, Langer and Roden, 1976. Physical benefits, improving immune response, heart rate, fine and gross motor skills. And then we have all the mental health benefits, less depression, less attention disturbance, more recognition, more satisfaction, more calm, more safety, more security, increased social contact. Now, we know that all the areas of research are limited in some way, and the truth has to be told that there are not too many quantitative research projects done in the area with people with dementia. There are more happening as we speak, but there are many, many, many qualitative research programs, and anybody who studies those is in no doubt that time in nature, time with other living things, a time with music, reminiscence, and all of this. There are many, many things that we can do within the environment of a person living with dementia that can lead to a wonderful quality of life. They're the things I think that we must pay attention to. After all, who doesn't want to end their days happy, cherished, protected, and integrated with everybody else? There's a lovely song by Janice Ian, "This is the sunset of your life." Wonderful. The most important thing when somebody comes into care, of course, as we often talk about, is how that person is welcomed. What the physical environment feels like for that person. Are they rushed in from hospital with some ambulance men who don't maybe know their full name? This often happens. Are they left in the corridor while somebody gets their room ready? Or are they welcomed with somebody in plain clothes who's very smiling and warm and connecting with them and making them feel secure? Anybody here, anybody of you who've ever been in hospital undergoing any kind of a procedure or being looked after, know how good it is to be able to attach yourself to somebody. And very often it's the tea lady, isn't it? Or the the man who comes in to sweep the floor out in the room. Very often that's the person who we make a real connection with. We feel safe with that person. It very often is not the staff. It very often is not even the family, because they're going and leaving you there. It very often is somebody who's down the food chain, you might say, as an employee, and they turned out to be our golden person. And all the while, our light is burning, and we are experiencing and storing up these memories of the first encounter that's going to make a big difference to how we are dealt with. Now, in many nursing homes, I know the emails are sent long before the resident arrives, and all of the "this is me" and the "key for me," and even the Jackie Pool, the PAL system has been set up and organized. And so it's a completely different story if we are completely prepared for the arrival of this person. And straight away, we know their level of health, their level of wakefulness. We understand their current reality, like exactly who are they now? Or where do they think they're going? What are their expectations? Has this person had a meal or a cup of tea, or what? What is on their mind? What is their primary focus? That's awful important. And if that is done well, it can lead to a great amount of laughter and fun and a wonderful time for the person. The person will remember that initial meeting for many months and years to come. At the same time, they will also remember if it isn't an ideal setup. So I just want to say that, of course, teamwork is everything. A good team working together one person will balance another. And say, for example, I'm there when the resident comes in, and then I have to go on my day off or my break or something. I will, even if I feel the person might not follow it, I will pass this person on to Louise or Mary or somebody and say, I will be back to you on Wednesday. I'm just away for my day off. And I know you're going to love these magazines or something. We leave something. The value of leaving something, something beautiful, some magazines or a serviette or a special pillow or whatever it is, that person feels cared for. I can tell you when my mother was in long-term care, there was one carer who bought her yogurts every day. And oh, my mother looked forward to that long after she remembered what the item was. She remembered the affectionate approach of the woman with something for her. And she'd go, yeah, 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 when this woman would approach. Her name was Teresa. Yeah, 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 yeah. My mother would so look forward to that. So that's one of the most important things, good teamwork in the environment. And in it, with a good teamwork, there'll be a flow of information. There'll be the passing on of the latest information in a very professional way. There won't be any laughing or joking or, jeering. Sometimes I've heard in handovers, I'm afraid to say, oh, he was at it again or something, Any responsive behaviors will be included in the description of what happened during the night or the morning or whatever during the handover. And the person must always be spoken about with their full name, not number 27 was a handful last night. We don't want people ever referred to by their room number. Dreadful that. Terrible. I think with good teamwork, a lot of things will just go really, really well. There'll be a good open relationship between the director of nursing, between the staff nurses and the day nurses, the carers, the cleaners, the chef. There'll be a great flow between them all and a lot of friendliness. And this is the most important thing for the well-being of that person with dementia. So I would suggest to somebody, if you want to put your relative in a particular home, go in and feel the temperature of what's actually happening. Are people giving each other time to chat, time to talk, time to be friendly? Is there respect? Now, if we compare, again, go back to the woodland and we think of the old oak tree or the beech tree and how fragile it is, although it looks strong, and we think of a person who similarly might look strong, but might in fact have a very dodgy health situation going on, or some great change in their cognitive state, impairment happening that we're not even aware of. Again, it is so important that observation is really paid attention to. We need to observe every little thing. I did a course a few years ago from Bradford University in dementia care mapping, and it was really sitting there all day long with a person or two people with dementia and watching every single thing that happens during the 8-hour period. Every single movement of eyes and smiles and grimaces and any movement of the body, the foot or the fingers, or any sounds that the person might make. It was really very interesting because it's through this kind of loving care and attention we can really understand how a person is. Are they in well-being or not? Of course, it's been discovered that neutral care is everywhere. Almost every place has neutral care, and some have good care and some have bad care. But the neutral care is when really nothing too bad is being done, but nothing too good is being done either. And I think that many, many nursing homes have the excuse of a lack of staff, a lack of resources, or we don't have the budget. And over the years, the HSE has never really come out and suggested a ratio of carer to patient. And this is the rock that we all perish on, really. It really is. I have seen 20, 30, and 40 people left alone without a carer for 5 or 10 minutes. Many, 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 many times. Think of all the things that can happen to a group of people who are very dependent, during that period. It's really quite shocking, but still we don't have guidelines that really say, well, what is really good care? And good care, in my mind, is when people are very relaxed, happy, smiling, getting on well, and doing very well, flourishing, as we say. Now, for a person to flourish, in our understanding of it now, with people living with dementia, there's some great books in the area. That book, Contented Dementia, for example, is absolutely fabulous, particularly in the way that it talks about how visitors should come and go from the space where people live. I find that so sensitive and so intelligent, that if somebody is visiting their wife or their husband or their mother in a care facility, they take their coat off in the hall and they wander in as though they've just been there all the time, because they're walking into this person's home. This is where their husband now lives. And they meander in, maybe even reading the paper or magazine as they walk in, and casually say hello to a few people, and not arrive in with, "Hi, how are you?" which, upsets the person who's sitting quietly in a chair. They breeze in with their coat and gloves, and they start talking about this outside world where this person wants to be, and is saying, I want, and I remember something out there. I want to get out. I want to go. How many times have we heard that? So important that the visitor arrives gently and leaves as gently, and says the right things, so that a person with dementia can follow, can understand. See, they don't really want to know all the answers of all the things. They just want to know that they're safe and that they're going to be in company. So I remember we'd say to my mother, "But you'll always be with other people. We would never leave you alone." She loved to hear that. You will never, never be alone, ever. We wouldn't do that to you. That would cheer her up. My mother had a doll for the last 3.5 years of her life, gave her huge pleasure. So that's another subject for another time. There are many things that work, and we know sometimes they can be complicated for certain people. So they're not just brought in at the drop of a hat. Okay, today I just want to say that this one, Feeding the Soul by Nourishing the Earth, it says here, this session will be about how to sustain a strong activity program by constantly replenishing resources from researched studies. Now, it is well known that when a person arrives in a nursing home and they settle in, and hopefully they have the "this is me" filled out, and everybody has had a meeting and they understand as much as they can the essence of Margaret Wood. They understand who she is and her likes and dislikes, her patterns and her personality, and maybe something of her history that will add to supplying things for her pleasure during the week, whether it's a knitting magazine or pictures of babies or whatever it is. It is very, very easy for us to just do any old thing, to have a program on the wall, an activity program, which looks good from the outside. That's the easiest thing to do, So you divide out the week, it's got 7 days, and you put in mass or prayers or bingo or reading, TV programs, a bit of yoga, a bit of exercise, hairdressing. You put these things in. But I have to say that I don't think that that constitutes a living, warm environment for anybody at all. I think it's completely the other way around. It needs to be, you know. When I see people coming out to cut the nails of a whole pile of residents one after the other, very often not sterilizing in between as well, I say to myself, have these people been trained? Now, very often people are doing jobs for which they are not trained. That is actually a fact. That happens in some places, unfortunately. People are doing something outside their area of competence. I remember as an activity coordinator, there was a girl came in to do hand massage and nails, for example. And I asked her if she had paper qualifications with the Red Cross or whoever. No, she hadn't. And she went off and did the course, and it wasn't expensive and it didn't take long. And I remember distinctly, she said to me months later, I'm really glad I did that course because a nurse asked me to cut a nail this morning and I decided against it because of what I had learned. You see, that is the absolute minimum we should expect when we put our resident into a nursing home, a care home, and we're paying top dollar for it too. We would expect that the person who's dealing with our mother or our relative is properly trained. Also, I have seen many, many times where people are there and they might be volunteers and they might be carers and they might be activity people, but they're involving themselves in some aspect of the care of this person with which they know nothing. So, for example, it's well known that people who are living with the dementia have a diminished sense of logic. So when one is organizing a quiz or some kind of a question time or a game for somebody living with dementia, that has to be considered. For example, that's quite a simple, straightforward one, you know. And asking a question which requires logic is just not going to work. It's not going to do anything for anybody. We had great quizzes many, many times, great games, but they were all specially designed for people living with dementia. And the sentences were shorter. The concepts were easy to follow. So the trained staff will understand how long an activity can be run for, what is needed, when to stop it, and when and how to deal with responsive behaviors of all sorts that can happen during the carrying out of an activity. It says here, replenishing resources. Yes, for 12 months, we need to replenish our resources very often. And I will say that I think the most simple way to do it without having too much clutter is to have ready to roll activities, ready to roll. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we sit down and we say, okay, we've got 12 months, we've got many themes, but we're going to save the Irish theme for March, because in March we have Paddy's Day and we have a couple of other religious dates like the 25th of March. So maybe we'll use an Irish theme in March and we might repeat it again in maybe September or something along with. That might be a secondary activity in September. And in February, of course, the gardeners will be all ready to go. So we're going to introduce everything to do with gardening and the outdoor and spring colors. They're the themes we're going to have then. So we'll order in the yellow paper now. So we'll have it to cut out the daffodils, you know, that type of thing. We plan ahead. We have the thing ready to roll. So in our gathering of materials, if we find a lot of, for example, pink string or fluorescent purple, we know that'll be lovely either in the summertime for the summer party box, or else we might use some of those colors even at Christmas time in a festive way. But our resources are piled up and stored. Now, a word about resources, please. If you go to some of these sites online, and I won't mention anybody, and you order plastic and synthetic stuff, it's going to end up in landfill up the hill from where you live on the side of a mountain. It's going to be there for maybe 200 or 300 years at least. So consider long and hard, please, before you order and pass on plastic of all sorts. We don't need plastic. And anyway, it's expensive. We don't need it at all. And we don't need spray paints, and we don't need all of those things. What we need is a great imagination. So just this week, we made a lot of bunting in a particular nursing home where I was. We made the bunting with old men's shirts. And we had great fun tearing up the men's shirts. There was, we were ticking the box of humor, having a little bit of fun. And a lot of people were using their fingers to rip the shirts and talk about them and etc. And then we made bunting, and it was lovely. And it's in a marquee where the residents can enjoy it for the rest of the summer and indeed into the autumn. So something that's made from fabric you already have, thread, wool, obviously all sorts of books, paperback books are fantastic, and many other things. Now we'll be coming back to this again. I know that Engaging Dementia is planning on doing a series on recycling, upcycling, as well as making resources for people, particularly people with late stage dementia, middle to late stage dementia. So you have that to look forward to. That will be great. The seasonal aspect it's very obvious in Ireland. We have 4 seasons. So it's very, very easy to divide all of those 4 seasons down into colors and into activities and into nature, but also into music, I will say. And in my experience, music is very, very limited in many nursing homes. We're still singing songs that were really the songs of people who died 10 years ago. You know, we need to modernize our song lists to catch up with the age of the people. The people I find now in their 70s can really enjoy Saturday Night Fever and John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John and the Beatles, you know. Yes, they still like Frank Sinatra and all of that. But there are many areas of music that are being rolled out time and time again, like Que Sera, Sera, oh my God. And some of these songs, if I have to hear them again, I think I'll go crazy. We can really dip much more deeply into it. And I have a few examples here. For example, at Christmas time, there's a wonderful array of sacred music from all over the world. You know, there's the Russian Orthodox Church, there's the Latin hymnals, there's beautiful traditional music in Spain, and just all over the world. There's such beautiful, beautiful music at Christmas that we don't have to be continuously belting out the same old, you know, songs. Not to say that we wouldn't have them, you know, certainly. But again, at Christmas time, Christmas, I think, is divided really into 3 sections. First of all, it should be delayed as late as possible, definitely not before the 5th or 6th of December. It's going to be on the television. That's more than enough, because it agitates people, you know, to think that, oh, I'm not ready for Christmas. I have to buy presents and get this and do that, you know. Christmas has 3 wonderful areas, I think. One is the traditional, the snow and the, you know, frozen north and all of that. That's a lovely part of Christmas. The traditional, the tartan ribbons, the gingerbread, the, you know, sleigh and the reindeers, and you can watch the videos of Lapland and all that whole thing. Then there's the festive, which is more than obvious what that is. It's all about stockings and presents and glitter and ding dong, Santa, Santa, Santa. And then there's the religious side of Christmas, which of course is very pleasing to our residents, very calming and lovely. And we can't have a good Christmas unless we plan for it for months ahead. And we have those resources stored on our shelves and use them every year, bring them out again, you know, and that's wonderful to recall people's days in the choir, or people's wonderful holidays, you know, maybe in some countries with traditional music, traditional sounds. That's a much richer experience than what we tend to get at Christmas time. Older people will tell you time and time again, particularly those living in a community, they love Halloween. They love the witch and the broom and the pumpkin and the bonfire. They love the full moon and the black cat. They love the dipping of coins, and they love eating an apple off a string or whatever. There's many ways to go with Halloween. There's lots of music for Halloween. There's lots of poetry. There's so many things we can do at this rich time of the year. So in building the resources, here's what I would say. I would say go to every month and put things in that are very obvious into your resources. Build your environment, if you like. So whatever you do in December can overflow into January. And a really good example of that is January can often be a very flat month, but it's an ideal month to feature snow and ice and frost, snowflakes. It's a brilliant time of year because we have some of that left over from the Christmas period, and we bring it into into January and so on down through the years. Now I'm looking at the time and I want to include a couple of things here, so I'm going to move on. Poetry and music, if it's properly used, can really do an awful lot to bring confidence to a person who doesn't have much confidence. Whether they read something which is written, you know, or they have it read to them, it can have a great effect. Something as simple as scents, and I don't mean smelling lavender in a bag, because in my experience, a lot of people cannot get the smell of lavender. It needs to sometimes be stronger. And this is a cologne, a morning cologne, Spanish cologne. And I have to say, most people love that in my memory. Different perfumes, different aftershaves, smells really help the environment, as do things that are written up, go placidly amidst the noise and haste, or something that a person has made in their environment. This is little bits of wool that have been just wrapped up in little spirals, for something that has been made by the resident or knitted or whatever can be brought up. These are roses made from an old blanket off a bed, which went into a hot wash. Just little small, little easy to do crafts. I want to close really by saying that Oliver Sacks, in that video, the man in the nursing home, you're probably very familiar with it. He talks about a quickening that happens within a person with dementia, a quickening, where a person is brought back into themselves again, into their own person. Their personhood is restored. That's fantastic. We know at the moment there is no pharmaceutical answer for the onset or the progression of dementia, many types of dementia. There is no single pharmaceutical answer. And that's why we must fall back on non-pharmaceutical interventions, which we know work. What I love about this is Oliver Sacks says, it not only changes the mood of the person, but it alters the perception of onlookers. It has a huge positive effect on the relationship between the person and his family, as well as between him and the paid carers. And we know for certain from our research notes that creativity is one of the greatest things that we can bring into the life of a person living with a dementia. It's one of the greatest things to bring them beauty and to expect beauty and goodness and happiness for them at the end, at the sunset of their life. And I hope you've enjoyed this morning. It is about getting the environment right. And I look forward to seeing you next month for the next program in this series. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye now.